Hi, so this is my first video in this series where today I'm going to talk about what is eating for health, or what is eating healthily. In a lot of the consultations I do, I always come across a lot of the similar questions, a misunderstanding as to what are carbohydrates, what are proteins, what are fats, what and why we need to eat protein, why do we need to have carbohydrates. For a long time in the health and fitness industry, carbohydrates have been slammed as being negative. Well, actually, in today's talk, you're going to hear and see what and why you need all of these three things and how you balance them in your daily lifestyle. So, key takeaways from this first series of the talk is going to be what you should eat and how you should time your meals. Now, for the supporting documentation, you will be getting example days for a male and a female. Now, they are based on the average male who weighs approximately 80 kilos and your average female who weighs approximately 60 kilos. I am assuming, as per most people that I see, you have a sedentary lifestyle. So you have a desk job, you spend most of your time sat down. So you're averaging approximately 5,000 steps a day if you wear trackable technology. And maybe you will go to the gym 3 times a week doing an average fitness class. If you are anything above that, take things into account as I'm going to talk about. And if you're anything below that, also take things into account as I'm talking about. So just bear that in mind when you're looking at any supporting documentation that's coming with this talk. So as I spoke about in the beginning, we're going to go into what is healthy eating. Now, eating for health isn't eating for performance. It's not eating for fat loss, it's eating for optimum health. Now, what is health? Health is basically ensuring that all of the systems in your body are healthily aligned or are working correctly. So what does that mean? That means that you're digesting well. So you're not gassy, you're not bloated, you have regular bowel movements, which for some people, regular bowel movements is approximately 1 to 3 bowel movements a day of a good quality stool. There are stool charts you can refer to online to help you identify if you have a healthy bowel movement. I did have one client, he thought regular bowel movements was 8 times a day. So I do stipulate healthy is 1 to 3. So are you digesting correctly? Are your hormones correct? So if you're a female, do you have a regular menstrual cycle? If you're a male, are you showing optimum testosterone levels, which comes down to morning arousal issues? As a male, you should still have those up until the age of 38, after which naturally your testosterone will decline, which may lead to a decreasing occurrence of morning arousal. So that's a very common one I see that men don't have, which we should have. So you have correct hormone levels, your energy levels, you're not constantly crashing, you don't suffer from brain fog, you don't suffer from short-term memory issues, you sleep correctly, you're able to detoxify correctly. Now, detoxification is a whole other topic which I won't go into, but it is a huge part of eating healthily. Your body should be able to clear out toxins that we are exposed to. So those are all signs and symptoms of eating healthily. And if you are not eating correctly, one or several, and or in some cases all of these things will be out of play. So first thing I'm going to quickly talk about are your 3 main nutrients, or your 3 fuel sources. You've got protein, carbohydrates, and fats. All 3 are essential for the body because all 3 will do different things in your body. So when someone says, no, you don't need carbohydrates, no, you don't need to have so much protein, or no, fats are bad for you, really do look into your research or knowledge sources. So first one I'm going to start with is protein. Now, protein is an extremely important piece of a healthy lifestyle. Now, protein is a bit more complex compared to the rest of them because protein isn't just protein. Protein is built up of several building blocks called amino acids, where you've got branched chain amino acids, essential amino acids, and non-essential amino acids. Now, non-essential amino acids basically means your body can make them itself. That's why they're non-essential. It can make them from other parts and create non-essential amino acids. Now, essential amino acids and branch chain amino acids, they cannot be made by the body. They need to be outsourced. So you need to consume them yourself. Now, this is where it gets more interesting, is because not all protein sources are the same. So what do I mean by that? Different types of proteins are going to have different ratios of amino acids. So if you think a car is not just a car. Every car may look the same, sort of. Like a cow will look like a chicken, and soya will look like a this, and that. They sort of look the same. It looks like a protein molecule, but when you break the car apart, they have different parts within them. And that's the same within protein. So your overall protein that you're getting in from your protein source is going to be made up of amino acids, and depending on the amino acid breakup will depict on how your body will utilize it and what your body can do with it. Which is why you need to always have a well-rounded intake of protein. You can't just live off chicken, you can't just live off beef. You can't just, so if you're living on a vegetarian side, you have to be very careful with your protein selections. You can't just live off certain types. You can't just live off, for example, a soy protein, because you're very low in branch chain amino acids. So supplementing in a spirulina protein, which is higher in branch chain amino acids, can help bolster the amino acid needs, for example. So that's a very important thing to understand with protein, knowing that proteins are made up of amino acids, and you have branch chain, essential and non-essential. So depending on your protein source will depict what ratios of them you're getting in. So if in doubt, vary your protein sources. If you are a vegetarian, variety is even more important. Do utilize your dairies and your eggs to get more complete proteins in. If you are a vegan, you can do it. However, supplementation tends to be necessary, especially within a powdered format. You can get great vegan proteins that have extra branch chain amino acids in there, which is something I highly recommend for all of my vegan clientele. So if you are a vegan, I would recommend consulting with a high-level nutritionist who knows their business about recommendations around protein sources, because it is a little bit more complicated. But for people that eat a whole, well-rounded diet, just vary your sources. Now, every meal needs to have some form of protein in there. Now, one of the big things we're talking about for protein does come from the whole bodybuilding world, about building muscle, being anabolic. Now, what we're talking about is what's called muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. Now, what does that mean? Synthesis, it means you are anabolic, which means your body is in a state where it can repair. Muscle protein breakdown is a state in which your body is going to be breaking constituent parts down in order to generate energy, for example. Now, the whole aim of being healthy is to be in as much of a protein synthesis as possible. Now, your body is always repairing cells. You will read on the internet, you'll read on studies about how within 6 months, your body can fully create a whole new organism. Your body's constantly in a state of repairing, rebuilding, building anew, which is why it's important to keep your muscle protein synthesis in a positive versus a negative. So one of the things I always see with people is they don't eat enough protein. Now, just from a muscle protein synthesis point of view, you can't just eat protein in one big meal. So you can't go, it's okay, for dinner, I'm going to eat a great big whole roast chicken. That's my protein for the day in. Sadly, with protein, it's something which you do need to space out regularly to hit that muscle protein synthesis window. Now, depending on your age and your sex, will depict how much you need. So just to use an example, a 50-year-old male versus a 22-year-old male will have to have two very different protein intakes. So a male in their 50s, to get optimum muscle protein synthesis, would need approximately 50 to 55 grams of whey protein, whereas a 22-year-old male will only need about 25 to 30 grams of protein to hit that optimum muscle protein synthesis threshold. So you have to think, if you are older, supplementation is probably something you're going to be looking at in order to hit sufficient protein intakes. Now, what are proteins used for? Proteins are, especially outside of repair, the building blocks of proteins, or the amino acids, are predominantly used for enzymes. Now, what are enzymes? Enzymes are catalysts to reactions. So every reaction in your body needs an enzyme. These enzymes will come from proteins, which will come from amino acids. So if you don't have a sufficient protein intake, a lot of your enzymatic reactions can become impaired. A lot of your body's ability to repair can become impaired. Now, you may not want to be getting a big frame or more muscular, but normal daily life is wear and tear. Your body's constantly having to repair joints, rebuild ligament tissue, repair muscles, repair digestive function, repair and restore enzymes, which is why protein is a very important ingredient to put in with every meal. Now, for me, I like for my clients to have some form of meat or fish or egg or dairy with every single meal. Now, if that's not possible, I always say to everyone, heck, sometimes it's just not possible to have protein in every meal, whether it's because you're traveling, place you're in, or time constraints. Therefore, the next best thing you can do is to supplement with a shake. For the majority of people, I actually recommend to use a vegan-based protein shake, just because a lot of people have digestive issues, which means they don't tolerate whey protein so much. I would think, for me, only about 15 to maximum 20% of clientele I work with will tolerate whey protein. So if you're in doubt, utilize a vegan protein powder, which you can then take alongside meals to bolster protein intakes. So that's your protein summary. The next one I'm going to go into is fats. So fats are very important because fats are what's used to make steroid hormones. Now, without fats, your body cannot make some of these steroid hormones. So a good example is your sex hormones are steroidal-based hormones, which means they're based off fat. So if you don't eat sufficient fat amounts, your body cannot produce these hormones. And it really is that simple. Now, when you look at fats, you have different fat sources. You've got saturated, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated. Now, when you're looking at fats, the only difference between them is the types of fat chains they are. So again, the key with everything is variety. So when you're looking at how you're planning your food or your food intakes, again, every meal should have some form of fat. Now, what are good, healthy fat choices? Olive oil is a great choice. So whether you're using olive oil on top of a salad, you've got avocados as a great choice. You've got coconut oil as a good choice. Now, I won't go into the in-depth topic of coconut oil, but coconut oil is one which you don't need to use too much of, because coconut oil is great use as a fuel, and that's its main component. You're not getting in the other components that you need from fats, such as also building cells outside of hormones. Brain tissue as well, sorry, is made up of fats. So coconut oils, you've also got certain types of animal fats as well, and you've also got your nuts and seeds too. So I like for every meal to have some form of fat. Now, whether that you choose to have a fattier cut of meat, whether it be a ribeye steak, lamb chops, or for example salmon, which are all high fat options, you therefore wouldn't use the fat condiments such as olive oil, butter, nuts, etc. If you're having a leaner protein such as a chicken breast, white fish, prawns, or a protein powder, when you use those choices, that's when you would then need to supplement with something such as an avocado, handful of nuts, or a drizzle of olive oil to get your fat sources in. So fats are extremely important. You need to have fats in your diet. Now, the key thing is, when avoiding fats, number one, you should avoid fats that are fried and processed, such as your canola oils, your palm oils, fats, your nut seed oils that are very high in omega-6s and 9s. Those are fats you want to avoid, and of course your typical trans fats which you'll get from fast food restaurants. So there are some diets that are very high in fat, such as keto diets. There's nothing so wrong with them, but if you are doing a high fat diet, the key that comes down to is knowing your fat choices. Now, if you're then a vegan where you don't have the option of taking animal fats in, what becomes very important is getting in sufficient omega-3. Now, this is where a vegan would definitely need to supplement, where I would advise that you take a chia seed oil extract, which is very high in omega-3, which is going to help correct your higher omega-6, 9 intake, which is part of being in a vegan diet. Now, secondly, if you are on a vegan diet with a fat intake, as I very quickly said a bit earlier about the different types of fats, you need to get the fats in that will work for your hormones. Now, the best type of fat with which you can use is a chocolate fat. So fat extract from chocolate is something I recommend for all vegans to use. It's actually quite nice if you put it in your coffee, and that's one way to make sure you are putting in sufficient fats that your body needs in order to produce hormones. If you're not a vegan, you will get those fats from your animal sources quite easily. So you wouldn't, animal and fish sources, so you wouldn't need to worry about that so much. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about is carbohydrates. Now, as I highlighted in the beginning, carbohydrates have been shamed by a lot of people. However, carbohydrates are essential for health. Carbohydrates, for example, your immune system. 90% of your immune system will operate off glucose. So if you are in a low carbohydrate state, your immune system is impaired because your white blood cells prefer to use glucose instead of ketones. So number one, carbohydrates are important for immune function. Number two, movement. You need carbohydrate to move. Yes, your body can use free fatty acids for energy. Yes, your body can produce ketones for energy. However, the preferred source is always carbohydrates. So now if we're talking about health, you then want every system in your body to be optimum. In order to create optimum, you therefore need to fuel every system in your body correctly. Therefore, having some carbohydrates with every meal is recommended. Now, the key with carbohydrate intake is number one, not too much. So as you'll see from the plan that I'm going to share with you, everything is controlled and limited. So you're not going to exceed a higher carbohydrate intake than your activity level dictates. Again, if you are doing more than what I said is the average, you would need more carbohydrate. So number one, you're not eating too much carbohydrate. Number two, the type of carbohydrate. Now you can then go into something called your glycemic index. More preferably, I prefer for people to look at the insulin index. It's more of a useful tool to look at when it comes to carbohydrates. But you need to make sure your carbohydrates are a slower release carbohydrate. Now what does that mean? They take a little bit longer to digest, and therefore they're going to get released more gradually into your digestive system. Number three, also carbohydrate variety. There's nothing wrong with eating fruits. Yes, they're higher in sugar, aka fructose, but fructose is also essential for your body. It's something that's going to help you because it comes with a lot of nutrients as well. So don't think you just have to stick to rice, potatoes, oats, for example. You can utilize fruits as well. And one thing I do say with people that have smaller appetites, there's no harm in putting in a small glass of fruit juice within a meal if you can't get the carbohydrate intake in that your body needs. So to summarize, every meal you have, you should have some form of carbohydrate, whether that's a rice, a potato, a piece of fruit, some oats, for example. If you can tolerate gluten, a piece of toast, some sourdough toast or rye bread. You should always have some form of protein, whether you're looking at some tofu, some beef, some chicken, some fish, or some form of beans or lentils that are also quite high in protein. You can, if you can't do any of those, you can also supplement with a protein shake, for example. And you should also have some form of fat. So if you're having a higher fat meat or fish, you wouldn't need to supplement in extra fat. But if you're having a leaner cut or you're on the vegan or vegetarian side of the proteins, you can use some extra olive oil, some extra nuts, some coconut oil, for example, to help bolster your meals. So you're going to see there that you have the example days for a male and a female, and you can see how food is spread out through three meals and a snack to evenly distribute your energy intake for an example of how a healthy day would look like. I hope this video has helped you, and I'll see you in part 2.